5 months ago, I couldn't say a single English sentence. Today, I speak fluently and confidently, and it changed my life. You can do it too. Hey everyone, this is Jake, and welcome to Easy English Official. I'm very happy you are here today. This video is made for people who want to learn English step by step. It is easy to follow and perfect for practice. Today, you will hear a simple but powerful story about a boy who faces challenges, works hard, and never gives up. As you watch, follow the words on the screen. You will hear correct pronunciation, see how sentences are structured, and learn both English and important life lessons. If you don't know a word, pause and listen again. Every time you practice, you grow more confident. Let's begin this journey together and enjoy learning English. Chapter 1: The Day I Failed. I still remember that morning as if it happened yesterday. The sun was bright, but I couldn't feel its warmth. My heart was racing as I turned on my computer for the interview. It was the moment I had been waiting for my whole life. For years, I had dreamed of working for an international company. I wanted to prove that a boy from Brazil could reach the world with his skills. I believed hard work alone would open every door. I was wrong. I didn't realize one door needed a special key: English. The Zoom window opened and 3 faces appeared on the screen. They smiled politely, but my hands started shaking. They began speaking fast, so fast that their words felt like a storm. I couldn't catch even one complete sentence. "Jake, can you tell us about yourself?" one of them asked. My mind froze. I knew exactly what to say in Portuguese, but in English, everything disappeared. My tongue felt heavy, my thoughts empty, and my dreams slipping away. I tried to speak anyway, hoping something would come out. Yes, I am. Software, coding, good." The silence that followed felt like 1,000 knives. Their smiles turned tight, polite, but distant. I already knew what that meant. They asked another question, but I couldn't understand. My ears heard the words, but my brain refused to translate. I stared at the screen, pretending to think, while inside I was breaking apart. I wanted the meeting to end, but I also didn't want it to end like this. Finally, one of them said, "All right, Jake, thank you for your time." That single sentence sounded like a door closing forever. I smiled weakly, said, "Thank you," and left the call. My dream was gone, not because I wasn't smart, but because I couldn't speak. I sat in silence for a long time, staring at my screen. The reflection in the black monitor showed a man who had tried, failed, and lost his confidence. My heart felt heavy, my stomach tight. I had never felt so small in my entire life. I walked outside to breathe, but the air felt thick with regret. I kept replaying the interview in my head, word by word, mistake by mistake. Every and sounded louder than before. I wanted to disappear. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept asking, "Why didn't you prepare more? Why didn't you learn English earlier?" But deep down, I knew I had tried before, and every time I gave up because I thought it was too hard. I remembered the teacher who made me memorize endless word lists. I remembered the grammar books I bought but never finished. I remembered feeling stupid when I couldn't make a simple sentence in class. Maybe I was never meant to speak English, I thought. But another voice whispered in my mind, a quiet, angry, determined voice. It said, "You lost today because you didn't understand. But if you learn, you will never lose again." That voice became the spark that would change everything. For the first time, I saw English differently. It wasn't just a subject or a language, it was a bridge to my future. Without it, I was invisible. With it, the world would finally hear me. That realization burned inside me like fire. I looked at my old notes and saw how I had learned before, memorizing rules, repeating meaningless words. None of it had worked. I realized the problem wasn't English. It was the way I had been learning. So, I decided to start again, but this time, differently. No grammar books, no boring lists. I would learn through real life, through speaking, listening, and feeling the language. I promised myself I would find my own way. The pain of failure became my new motivation. I wrote one sentence in my notebook. I will speak English fluently. It wasn't a wish. It was a decision. I read that sentence out loud again and again until it became a promise to my future self. I thought about the interviewer's face, the silence, the rejection. Instead of letting it break me, I turned it into energy. Every moment of shame became fuel. Every tear became a reason to keep going. When morning came, I felt different. I wasn't scared anymore. I was hungry to prove that one failure didn't define me. I wanted to transform that painful memory into my greatest success story. I started planning my days around English, not as a student, but as someone preparing for a second chance. I decided I would rebuild myself, word by word, sentence by sentence, day by day. That was the beginning of my journey, not the perfect start, not a happy one, but a real one. The kind of beginning that hurts enough to make you move. The kind of pain that forces you to grow. Looking back, I realized that failure was my best teacher. It showed me exactly what I needed to change. It stripped away my excuses, my pride, and my comfort. It made me humble enough to start again. When people say failure is the first step to success, I now understand what it really means. It's not a quote, it's a reality you have to live through. That day, my failure gave birth to a new version of me. I wasn't the same Jake anymore. I was the Jake who had tasted defeat and still refused to quit. The Jake who would speak English fluently, no matter how long it took. I had lost one interview, but I had found my purpose. Every journey starts with a single painful truth. Mine began with one. English had power, and I didn't have it yet. But now, I was ready to fight for it. I was ready to change my life, one word at a time. And that's how the worst day of my life became the first step of my transformation. The day I failed wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of everything. Chapter 2. The Decision. That night, I sat in front of my notebook, the same one that had seen my old failures. The pages were filled with half-finished lessons and forgotten dreams. But this time felt different. This time, I wasn't chasing motivation. I was choosing discipline. I wrote one simple sentence on the first clean page. I will speak English. I stared at it for a long time. It didn't look powerful, but deep down, I knew those 4 words could change everything. I made a promise to myself, no excuses, no fear. I decided to treat English like survival, not a hobby. I didn't care about being perfect anymore. I just wanted to understand, to connect, to be free. I wanted to live my life without translation. So I built a plan, not a complicated one, just real and honest. I would study every single day for at least 2 hours. I would speak even when I made mistakes. I would learn with my ears, my eyes, and my heart. Instead of expensive classes, I turned to what I already had: my phone, the internet, and determination. I searched YouTube for English stories and conversations. I didn't understand most of them, but I listened anyway. I trained my brain like an athlete trains muscles. Every new word felt like a tiny victory. Sometimes I had to repeat one sentence 20 times to understand it. But every time I did, I felt the wall between me and the world slowly start to crack. It was hard, but it was working. At first, I sounded ridiculous. My pronunciation was broken, my accent heavy, my words awkward. But I didn't care. I realized that fluency doesn't start with perfect grammar. It starts with courage. There were days I wanted to quit, days when I thought I wasn't improving. But I remembered the interview, the silence, the pain. I used that memory like fire, and it kept me going even when motivation disappeared. I stopped comparing myself to others. Instead, I focused on being better than yesterday. One more word, one more sentence, one more brave attempt. That was my new rule. Little by little, English began to feel alive inside me. Every morning, I spoke to myself in English. I described what I saw, what I felt, what I planned to do. My own voice became my first teacher. I made mistakes out loud, and that was okay. Silence was no longer my enemy. At night, I watched English movies with subtitles. At first, my eyes chased every word. But soon, my ears started to understand faster than my eyes could read. It was like magic. My brain was finally listening. I started writing small journal entries in English every day. Simple things. What I did, what I learned, what I dreamed of. It felt awkward at first, but those short sentences became proof that I was growing. I was teaching myself how to think differently. When people around me laughed or doubted, I didn't argue. I just smiled and said, "You'll see." Because I knew every single hour I spent learning was a seed, and one day those seeds would bloom. Slowly, English started to show up in my thoughts. I caught myself thinking in English while walking, while cooking, while showering. That was when I realized I was no longer just learning English. I was becoming someone new. There were moments of loneliness, of doubt, of exhaustion. But I found comfort in the process. I realized that every struggle was a sign of progress. I didn't need anyone's approval anymore. I was building my own success story. I replaced my music playlist with English podcasts. Every morning on the bus, I listened and repeated. People probably thought I was crazy talking to myself, but I didn't care. I was practicing for my future conversations. Some nights, I stood in front of the mirror and spoke like I was giving a TED Talk. I imagined I was inspiring others with my story. My pronunciation wasn't perfect, but my confidence was real. I was becoming fluent not just in English, but in self-belief. Each week, I challenged myself to learn something new. One new phrase, one new idea. I didn't chase perfection. I chased consistency. Because consistency is what separates dreamers from achievers. I began to fall in love with the language. Not just the words, but the power behind them. English became my friend, my tool, my bridge to the world. And the more I practiced, the closer I felt to the life I once thought was impossible. My small victories began to add up. I could watch interviews without subtitles. I could write comments online in English. I even joined a small online community where people practiced speaking. For the first time, I felt understood. It wasn't easy. Some days I felt tired, frustrated, or lost. But every time I looked back, I saw how far I had come. The person who once failed an interview was now speaking, learning, growing, becoming. One day, I realized something beautiful. I no longer feared English. It no longer felt like a wall. It felt like a door, and I had finally found the key. That was the moment I knew I was unstoppable. I smiled and whispered to myself, "You did it." You finally started. I hadn't reached fluency yet, but I had crossed the hardest part, the decision to never give up again. That decision had already changed me forever. The next morning, I woke up excited, not afraid. I turned on a podcast, made coffee, and spoke along with it. It felt natural, like breathing. I was becoming fluent in more than just a language. I was becoming fluent in confidence, in life. Looking back, that night wasn't the end of my failure. It was the beginning of my transformation. One decision had turned my weakness into my weapon, and from that moment, nothing could stop me again. Chapter 3. The first 15 days. The first morning of my new plan felt strange. There were no grammar books on my table, no long vocabulary lists, no pressure to be perfect. Just me, my notebook, and 50 simple sentences that could help me survive any conversation. I called them my survival sentences. They were short, useful, and powerful, the kind of phrases that open real conversations. How are you? Can you help me? I don't understand. Please say that again. They were my building blocks. Every morning, I stood in front of the mirror and repeated them. My voice sounded shy at first, unsure, but I kept going. The more I said them, the more natural they felt. My shower became my classroom, and my reflection became my teacher. I didn't correct myself too much. I just focused on sound and rhythm. I listened to how native speakers talked on YouTube and tried to copy their energy. I didn't need to sound perfect. I just needed to sound alive. By day 3, something inside me changed. I no longer felt embarrassed to speak English alone. I felt proud. Each sentence I said out loud was a small victory, a step away from silence, a step closer to fluency. I started adding emotions to my practice. I said, "I'm happy," with a smile, "I'm sad," with a sigh, and "I'm tired," with a laugh. English wasn't just words anymore, it was feelings. It became a language my heart could understand. On day 4, I began recording myself. The first few times, I couldn't even listen to my own voice. I hated how strange I sounded. But then I realized every recording was proof of progress, not proof of failure. Each night, I compared my new recording with the first one. I could hear improvement, small but real. My pronunciation was smoother, my tone clearer, my fear smaller. It was working, even if slowly. By day 5, English words started to follow me everywhere. I heard them in songs, in movies, in ads. I even dreamed in English for the first time. It was just one short dream, but I woke up smiling like I had found a secret superpower. I stopped translating from Portuguese. Instead, I started connecting directly with meaning. When I saw coffee, I didn't think cafe anymore. I thought of the smell, the taste, the morning light. English was becoming part of my senses. I created a little game for myself. Every time I learned a new sentence, I used it in 5 different situations. It made my practice fun, almost like acting. I was learning how to live in English, not just study it. By the end of the first week, I had memorized all 50 survival sentences. But more importantly, I could use them naturally. My confidence grew faster than my vocabulary. That was the first real sign of change. I realized something powerful. Learning English wasn't about how much I studied, but how I felt while studying. When I enjoyed it, I remembered more. When I smiled, I learned faster. Joy was my new method. On day 8, I decided to speak with someone online. It was a short voice chat with another learner. My heart was racing again, just like the interview day. But this time, I didn't freeze. I spoke. I made mistakes. And I laughed. The conversation lasted only 5 minutes, but it felt like a personal victory. I wasn't fluent yet, but I was free. The fear that once controlled me was gone. That call changed my belief in myself. Every day after that, I practiced more naturally. While cooking, I described what I was doing. While walking, I narrated what I saw. My life became my English class. I realized that fluency lives in daily moments, not in textbooks. Some days were harder than others. There were mornings when my motivation felt weak, when I just wanted to stay silent. But I reminded myself, silence was my old life, and I wasn't that person anymore. I started to use English as a mindset, not just a goal. Whenever I felt lazy, I said in English, "Come on, Jake. You can do it." Those small pep talks in another language gave me strength. English became my inner voice of courage. By day 10, I stopped caring about mistakes completely. I even started joking about them. Each mistake felt like a friend teaching me something new. I learned to fail faster, because failure meant growth. I also noticed something unexpected. My thinking patterns changed. I became more confident, more curious, more open-minded. Learning a language wasn't just expanding my words, it was expanding my world. I made flashcards with real sentences, not isolated words. I like this. I need that. That's amazing. What do you mean? They were simple, but alive. Simplicity made me consistent, and consistency made me strong. By day 12, I could feel a rhythm forming. I didn't need to push myself as much. English was pulling me forward. It became a habit I didn't want to skip. The process itself became addictive. I rewarded myself for small wins. When I completed my morning sentences, I made coffee and smiled proudly. I realized that success is not a single big event. It's 1,000 small moments of discipline. By day 15, I wasn't fluent, but I was fearless. I could introduce myself confidently, ask questions, share opinions. I wasn't the same person who had failed that interview. I was someone new, someone who believed again. Looking back at those first 15 days, I understood one thing clearly. Transformation doesn't wait for perfect conditions. It begins the moment you decide to show up. And I had finally shown up for myself. Chapter 4, Real Practice, begins. When I finished my first 15 days, I felt stronger. I could speak basic sentences without thinking too much, but I knew it wasn't enough. I didn't want to sound like a robot repeating lines. I wanted to have real conversations. That's when the question-answer method was born. I realized that in real life, we don't memorize speeches. We respond, we listen, think fast, and speak naturally. So, I decided to train my brain the same way. Every question would become an exercise. Every answer would become my growth. I started with the simplest one. What did you do today? It sounded so basic, but it was powerful. Because that one question opened the door to 100 possible answers, and that's where real English lives, in possibilities. At first, my answers were short and awkward. I worked. I studied. I ate lunch. But I didn't stop there. I added more every day. I worked on my project. I worked on my project for 3 hours. Then I took a break. With each new version, I was training my mind to stretch. The sentences grew longer, smoother, and more natural. I didn't even notice it happening. It just flowed. My confidence grew with every word I added. By the third day, I could talk for a full minute without stopping. That might sound small, but to me it was freedom. My brain was no longer freezing. My mouth was no longer waiting for permission. I was finally thinking in English. The method became a game. I asked myself questions during the day. What will I eat? Where am I going? How do I feel right now? And I answered them out loud. My thoughts were becoming bilingual, then purely English. Sometimes I even surprised myself. I'd start talking and realize halfway through that I hadn't translated a single word. It was as if English had quietly moved into my brain and built a home there. By the end of the first week, I could describe my entire day in English, from the moment I woke up to the time I went to bed. It felt amazing. I was finally living the language instead of studying it. But I wanted to go deeper, so I increased the challenge. I recorded myself answering difficult questions. What is your dream? What makes you happy? What do you fear? And I pushed my thoughts beyond the surface. These weren't just English exercises anymore. They were reflections of who I was. My words started carrying emotion, not just meaning. I was expressing myself, not performing for a test. That changed everything. Then I discovered a secret weapon: repetition with variation. Every time I answered a question, I tried a new version. Different tenses, different moods, different examples. My sentences became flexible, like a muscle that had finally learned to move. I noticed my rhythm improving. The pauses between my sentences got shorter. My brain was learning to respond instantly without asking for translation help. That's what fluency really is: speed without stress. There were moments when I got stuck, of course. Sometimes my brain froze mid-sentence, and the old fear came back. But instead of stopping, I laughed it off. I said, "Okay, next question," and kept going. The more I spoke, the more I discovered my voice. I wasn't copying anyone anymore. I wasn't trying to sound perfect. I was sounding like me. And that authenticity gave me even more confidence to continue. I added new tools to my routine: audio clips, podcasts, and YouTube interviews. I would pause after every sentence and answer the same question myself, pretending to be part of the conversation. It was fun and surprisingly effective. One day, I watched a short interview with a famous actor. The interviewer asked, "What keeps you motivated?" I paused and answered in English. "My dream keeps me motivated. The fear of giving up keeps me motivated." For a moment, it felt like we were talking. Each day, my sessions got longer. 10 minutes became 20, 20 became 30. Sometimes I lost track of time because I was enjoying it so much. English was no longer a subject. It was a friend I spoke to every day. After 2 weeks, I noticed another major shift. My pronunciation was improving naturally. I wasn't forcing it anymore. The more I spoke in rhythm, the more I sounded like a native speaker. My mouth had learned the music of the language. I started using mirrors again, just like in the first 15 days. But now, instead of repeating survival sentences, I was having conversations with my reflection. I asked questions, I answered, I laughed at my own jokes. It was therapy in English. Some evenings I would go for a walk and talk to myself softly. What did I achieve today? What can I do better tomorrow? The people around probably thought I was crazy, but I was building fluency, one step at a time. There were still bad days, of course, times when I felt tired or lazy. But I reminded myself, the Jake who failed that interview would kill for this chance. So I kept talking, even when I didn't feel like it. Consistency became my strength. One night, I realized something beautiful. I wasn't just answering questions anymore. I was asking better ones. My curiosity was growing. My English wasn't just improving my language, it was improving my mind. By the end of that month, my question-answer method had become my favorite ritual. It wasn't boring, it wasn't stressful. It was alive. It made me smarter, faster, and more confident in ways I never imagined. Looking back, I understood why this method worked so well. It trained me to think, to react, to speak, not to memorize. It made English part of my thinking process. It wasn't study time anymore. It was life in English. And that's when I realized, fluency isn't something you chase. It's something that grows quietly inside you every time you decide to keep speaking, keep trying, and keep believing that your voice matters. Chapter 5. Fixing my accent. When I started speaking more, I realized something new. My words were clear, but my sound wasn't. People understood me, but I didn't sound like them. My accent was strong, and every time I heard myself on a recording, I cringed a little. I didn't want to erase my identity. I love being Brazilian. But I wanted to sound natural. I wanted people to listen to me without struggling to understand. I wanted my English to flow like music. That's when I discovered the echo technique. It wasn't complicated, it wasn't expensive. It was simple. Listen carefully to native speakers, pause, and repeat them exactly. Every tone, every rhythm, every emotion. I chose a movie clip for my first practice. The actor said, "I don't know what you're talking about." I paused, took a breath, and echoed it. "I don't know what you're talking about." My voice felt stiff, but I kept going. At first, it was frustrating. My mouth didn't move the same way, my tongue felt heavy, and my voice didn't match the rhythm. But I reminded myself, babies don't get pronunciation perfect on day one. Neither would I. I practiced one sentence at a time. I didn't rush. Each line was like a small song, and I was learning to sing in English. Slowly, my ears became sharper. I started hearing small sounds I never noticed before. English had its own music. Some words rose like a wave, others dropped softly. It wasn't just pronunciation, it was melody. Once I understood that, I stopped speaking English like reading a textbook. I started feeling it. Every morning, I practiced for 30 minutes. I picked one short clip from a movie, podcast, or YouTube video. I listened once, then repeated 10 times. It became my morning ritual, like brushing my teeth, but for my tongue. By the end of the first week, I noticed improvement. My TH sounded cleaner, my R softer, and my T lighter. I didn't sound native yet, but I sounded confident. And that confidence was louder than any accent. Then I added emotion to my practice. I didn't just copy the words, I copied the feeling. When the actor sounded angry, I shouted. When they laughed, I laughed too. My neighbors probably thought I was crazy, but I was becoming fluent. Sometimes I practiced scenes from my favorite movies. I became the character for a few minutes, walking, talking, even breathing like them. It wasn't imitation anymore. It was transformation. After 2 weeks, people started noticing. My friends said, "Hey Jake, your English sounds smoother." My online speaking partners asked, "Have you been studying phonetics?" I just smiled and said, "No, just echoing." Echoing didn't just change my accent, it changed my listening. I started understanding native speakers faster. The rhythm, the pauses, the stress, they all made sense now. I was no longer lost in fast speech. I learned that pronunciation isn't about having a perfect accent. It's about clarity and connection. When people understand you easily, the conversation flows naturally. That's when real communication begins. By the third week, I started mixing the technique with shadowing. I played short videos and repeated every line in real time, matching speed and rhythm. It felt like running a marathon with my mouth. Exhausting, but exciting. There were days when I couldn't match the pace. I stumbled, mumbled, or missed words. But instead of quitting, I laughed and tried again. Every mistake made my mouth stronger, more flexible, more free. Sometimes I recorded both voices, the native speaker and mine. Then I compared them side by side. At first, they sounded like two strangers, but after a few weeks, they started sounding like brothers. That's when I knew it was working. I realized that sound is not just about the tongue, it's about attitude. When you speak English with energy, confidence, and rhythm, people don't just hear your words, they feel them. That's what I was aiming for. One morning I joined an English conversation group. When I spoke, a girl from Canada said, "Wow, your accent is so clear. Where did you learn?" I laughed. This was the same guy who once couldn't say "How are you" without fear. Her comment meant everything to me. It wasn't just about pronunciation anymore. It was proof that I belonged. English was no longer a wall between me and the world. It had become a bridge. By the end of the month, I felt unstoppable. My words had rhythm, my sentences had flow, and my confidence had no limit. I finally sounded the way I always wanted to feel, natural, calm, and alive. When I listened to my old recordings, I smiled. The nervous voice, the broken rhythm, the heavy accent. It was all part of my story. I didn't hate it anymore. It was the sound of progress, not failure. I learned one important truth. Your accent is not your weakness. It's your history. The goal isn't to erase it. It's to make it clear, confident, and understood. That's what makes you powerful. Now, when people ask me how I fixed my accent, I tell them the truth. I didn't fix it. I trained it. I shaped it with patience, repetition, and love for the language, and that's something anyone can do. Looking back, the echo technique didn't just teach me to sound natural. It taught me to listen deeply, to feel language, and to express emotion through sound. It turned speaking into art. Chapter 6. Learning Words That Stick. For years, I believed learning English words meant memorizing endless lists. I wrote pages and pages of vocabulary I never used. Every test I passed faded a week later. My memory was full, but my mouth was empty. One night, I looked at my notebook and felt defeated. Hundreds of words, none alive in my mind. That's when I realized the truth. Memorizing doesn't build fluency. Feeling does. I needed a new way to make words stick. So I stopped memorizing. I stopped forcing myself to remember. Instead, I started building stories. Tiny, personal, emotional stories that connected new words to my own life. That's when English stopped being study material and became imagination. I set a rule, 5 new words a day. That was it. Not 10, not 20, just 5. But each one had to live in a story. I called it the 5-word story method. It sounded simple, but it changed everything. The first 5 words I chose were river, secret, shadow, escape, and hope. That night, I created a mini-story. I walked by the river with a secret in my shadow, dreaming of escape and hope. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. The next morning, I remembered all 5 words instantly, not because I forced them, but because my mind loved the story. Words inside a story don't disappear. They stick to the emotions that created them. Every day, I made new stories. Some were funny, some sad, some totally crazy. I didn't care. The goal wasn't perfection. It was connection. I was learning to build meaning, not memory. Sometimes I told my stories out loud while walking. Other times I whispered them before bed. My brain started treating English like a dream language, something natural, creative, and alive. After a week, I looked at my notebook again. Instead of random words, I saw characters, places, and feelings. Each word had a story, and each story had a heartbeat. For the first time, vocabulary felt like art. I realized something powerful. Your brain doesn't remember words. It remembers feelings attached to them. If a word makes you smile or cry or laugh, it stays. That's why stories work. They make learning emotional. I started using this method everywhere. When I watched movies, I picked 5 new words and created stories around them. When I read a book, I built scenes in my head using those words. Learning became a game I couldn't stop playing. Some nights, I combined all my stories from the week into one long story. It didn't always make sense, but it was fun. And without realizing it, I was reviewing everything naturally. No flashcards, no pressure, just storytelling. One day, a friend asked me, "How do you remember so many words?" I smiled and said, "Because they're part of my life now." He didn't understand at first, but he could see it in the way I spoke. My words had emotion. The more I told stories, the faster I learned. I wasn't just memorizing definitions. I was experiencing words. Lonely wasn't just a word anymore. It was a feeling from one of my stories. Victory wasn't vocabulary. It was a moment. After a month, I had over 150 words living in my mind, not written, not forced, but remembered through emotion. I could use them in conversations naturally, without thinking twice. They had become part of my voice. That's when I realized language isn't stored in your memory, it grows in your imagination. The more alive your stories, the stronger your English becomes. That's the real secret of fluency. I began helping my friends try this method. Some were skeptical at first, but once they built their first 5-word story, they couldn't stop. The moment they laughed at their own creation, the words stayed forever. My stories became daily rituals. Each morning I created one, each evening I reviewed it. Some were just a few lines, but they carried worlds inside them. English was no longer a foreign language. It was the language of my dreams. Sometimes I mixed old words with new ones, blending them into new meanings. It made me realize that vocabulary is like Lego blocks. The more you play, the more you can build. And the only rule is, never stop creating. There were days I felt tired or uninspired. On those days, I told short stories about my mood. Today I feel stuck, but tomorrow I'll rise. Even that tiny story kept me connected to English and to myself. Eventually, I started journaling in English, using my stories as seeds. The more I wrote, the more fluent I became. My thoughts flowed freely, my grammar improved naturally, and my vocabulary kept expanding without effort. One day, I found one of my old word lists from years ago. It felt like looking at a stranger's homework, lifeless and empty. I smiled, tore the page out, and replaced it with a story. That's when I knew I'd never go back. When people hear me speak now, they often say, "Your English sounds emotional, alive." I tell them it's because I don't speak with words, I speak with stories. That's what gives language its soul. The 5-word story method became more than a study trick. It became a creative habit. It trained my brain to think in context, not translation. To feel in English, not just speak it. And maybe that's why English finally became easy for me, because I stopped learning like a student and started dreaming like a storyteller. That's when every word began to stick and stay forever. Chapter 7. Thinking in English. I realized that to truly improve, I had to live in English every day. I started noticing everything around me and describing it aloud. The sky, the trees, the people, everything became a lesson. I asked myself simple questions constantly. What am I doing? What will I eat? How do I feel? I answered in English, even if my sentences were short. I began writing a daily journal. At first, it was simple. I woke up. I ate breakfast. I went to work. Each sentence felt small, but it mattered. Slowly, I started thinking in English. My brain no longer translated from my native language first. Words and ideas flowed naturally, and I felt progress every day. I challenged myself to speak in English whenever I was alone. In the shower, cooking, or walking, I narrated my actions. I am making tea. I like the smell. It is hot. I created small mental games. I picked an object and described it in detail: color, size, purpose. The blue cup is on the table. It holds water. I will drink it. I also asked deeper questions. Why did this happen? What will I do next? I answered in full sentences, practicing new vocabulary and grammar naturally. Sometimes I talked to imaginary friends. I asked them questions and gave opinions in English. It felt silly at first, but my fluency improved rapidly. I read short stories in English and tried to summarize them aloud. The boy runs fast. He wants to win. He is tired, but he keeps going. This reinforced sentence structure. I described emotions in English. I feel happy. The sun is shining. I am grateful for this moment. Expressing feelings helped me think more deeply in English. I created mental maps of my day entirely in English. Each event, each conversation, each thought became part of my practice. My mind was immersed completely. I recorded myself speaking. Listening back helped me notice mistakes. I corrected them immediately and repeated the sentences multiple times until they sounded natural. I started thinking ahead in English, planning my day, predicting outcomes, making decisions, all in English. My thoughts became proactive, not just reactive translations. I visualized conversations before they happened. If someone asks me about work, I will say, this preparation helped me speak confidently when opportunities arose. I practiced thinking in English while reading subtitles on TV or movies. I translated only mentally to check understanding, but quickly tried to keep my mind in English. I challenged myself with questions I didn't know answers to. What is quantum physics? How does the internet work? I attempted explanations in English using simple words. I used sticky notes around my room in English, objects, reminders, motivational phrases. Everything forced my brain to label in English constantly. I forced myself to describe abstract ideas. Freedom means I can choose. Happiness is feeling content. Knowledge grows when I read this built deeper vocabulary. I discussed books, news, and ideas aloud in English. Even if no one listened, I practiced opinion building and reasoning entirely in English. I reflected on past mistakes in English. I said the wrong word yesterday. Next time, I will remember self-correction became a natural habit. I practiced asking questions about other people's actions or emotions. Why is he smiling? What does she want? This sharpened comprehension and thinking skills. I started journaling in longer sentences. Today, I went to the park. I saw children playing. The sun was bright. I felt happy and relaxed. This improved sentence flow. I began imagining conversations in my head before sleeping. Planning dialogues, expressing opinions, or telling stories in English became routine. I reviewed my notes and mental exercises regularly. Repetition helped my brain internalize sentence patterns and vocabulary without memorizing. I noticed the biggest change. I no longer translated first. Thoughts in English came naturally. My internal dialogue became fluent, fast, and effortless. Living in English became a lifestyle. I was not just learning words or grammar. I was living, thinking, and feeling in English every day. By the end of this stage, I felt a profound shift. English was no longer a subject or a challenge. It was my language of thought, my lens on the world. Chapter 8. The Breakthrough. For weeks I had practiced alone, talking to mirrors, recording my voice, and shadowing movies. But deep down, I knew the real challenge was still waiting. The moment I had to face native speakers, the thought terrified me. Every time I imagined it, my heart raced. What if they laughed? What if I froze? What if they said something I couldn't understand? The fear wasn't about English. It was about feeling not enough. That fear had followed me for years. But one morning, I decided I was done hiding. I told myself, if I wait until I'm perfect, I'll never speak. So I opened my laptop, searched English speaking practice online, and clicked the first group I found. My hands were shaking. The group call started with 4 strangers from around the world. Their faces popped up one by one, cheerful, confident, relaxed. My voice trembled when I said, "Hi, I'm Jake." It was the shortest, hardest sentence I had ever said, but something magical happened. They smiled. They listened. They didn't judge. One of them said, "Nice to meet you, Jake." And just like that, my fear began to melt. The nightmare I imagined wasn't real. It was just in my head. At first, I spoke slowly, carefully choosing every word. But the more they talked, the more I realized communication isn't about perfection. It's about connection. So I stopped chasing perfect grammar and started chasing real conversation. We talked about hobbies, travel, even food. Sometimes I made mistakes and laughed at myself. Sometimes they corrected me gently. But each time I spoke, I grew braver. My words became smoother. My silence became shorter. I remember one girl from Canada who said, "Don't worry about mistakes. We all make them." That single sentence felt like freedom. For the first time, I wasn't trapped by fear. I was learning through laughter. After a few sessions, I noticed something amazing. The nervous energy that once made my heart pound now felt like excitement. The camera light no longer scared me. It invited me to speak. I was becoming part of the world. Each conversation taught me more than any textbook. I learned how people really talk. The slang, the jokes, the rhythm. My English stopped sounding like a lesson and started sounding like me. Of course, I still made silly mistakes. I once said "I'm boring" instead of "I'm bored." Everyone laughed, including me. But that laughter didn't sting. It made me feel human. Mistakes had become my teachers. Soon I joined English clubs, language exchange apps, and even gaming chats. I practiced everywhere I could, not for grammar, but for courage. I was training my confidence, not just my accent. The more I spoke, the more I realized something powerful. The fear never really disappears. You just get stronger than it. Every sentence you speak is another step away from fear and closer to freedom. One day, I joined a conversation with a group of native speakers. No subtitles, no preparation, no plan. Just me, my voice, and everything I'd learned. I was terrified, but I spoke anyway. And that's when the breakthrough happened. Halfway through the chat, I forgot I was speaking English. I stopped translating, stopped worrying, stopped doubting. The words just flowed. I was thinking in English, living in it. That was the moment everything changed. When the call ended, I sat in silence. My heart was still racing, but this time it wasn't fear. It was pride. I had done it. The thing I'd been afraid of for years had become the thing that set me free. From that day on, I chased opportunities to talk, not hide. I joined new groups, found friends from 10 different countries, and shared my story with them. Every voice I met made my world bigger. I realized that English wasn't just a skill anymore. It was a bridge to people, cultures, and ideas I never would have known without it. Speaking had turned into connection, and connection had turned into confidence. I started helping beginners who were just like I used to be, nervous, quiet, full of self-doubt. I told them, your English doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be alive. They smiled, and I saw myself in their eyes. With every conversation, I grew not just as a speaker, but as a person. I learned patience, empathy, and courage. I stopped comparing myself to native speakers. I started celebrating my own voice, the accent that told my story. Some nights I looked back at my first video recordings. The fear, the pauses, the shaking voice. They no longer embarrassed me. They reminded me how far I'd come. Every mistake was proof of progress. I finally understood that confidence doesn't come after success. It creates success. You speak first, then you grow. You act before you feel ready. That's how transformation happens. Today, when I talk to native speakers, it feels natural. I joke, I share, I even teach them slang from my language. English no longer feels foreign, it feels like home. That's what the breakthrough truly was. Not a single moment, but 1,000 tiny steps of courage that led me here. And if I could do it, anyone can. Because confidence isn't about speaking perfectly. It's about speaking bravely, again and again, until your fear becomes your story, and your story inspires someone else to begin. Chapter 9. The Dream Job. After months of struggle, practice, and countless mistakes, I felt ready to try again. My English had transformed, and so had my confidence. I was no longer the same Jake from 5 months ago. I polished my resume, prepared answers, and rehearsed conversations, but this time I focused on my voice, not perfection. I reminded myself, mistakes are part of learning. Courage is everything. The day came. I opened my laptop and joined the video call. 3 interviewers smiled at me. My heart raced, but it wasn't fear anymore. It was excitement. I was ready to show what I had learned. The first question came, tell us about yourself and your experience. I took a deep breath and spoke clearly. My words flowed naturally. I didn't pause or hesitate. I didn't translate in my head. I just spoke. I told them about my projects, my experience, and my passion for coding. I added small stories from my journey. I laughed, I smiled, I showed them the real me, confident and human. Every answer built momentum. The longer the interview went, the more I realized I belonged there. My accent didn't matter. My minor mistakes didn't matter. My determination, effort, and growth mattered most. At one point, I even joked about my first failed interview. Everyone laughed. That moment broke the last barrier of tension. I wasn't nervous anymore. I was present, alive, and fully in English. The interview ended. They smiled, nodded, and thanked me. I waited, holding my breath. Seconds felt like hours. Then one of them said words I had dreamed of for years. "Congratulations, Jake. You got the job." I couldn't believe it. 5 months ago, I had been rejected, crushed by fear, embarrassed by my English. And now, I had turned it all around. I had my dream job, thanks to courage and persistence. The salary was $5,000 a month, more than I had imagined. But more than the money, it was the proof that hard work pays off, that transformation is possible, that your efforts can change your life completely. I called my parents immediately. "Mom, Dad, I got it," I cried. My mother wept on the phone. My father, usually stoic, said, "We always knew you could do it." That moment made every struggle worthwhile. I realized then that this wasn't just about me. It was about them, my family, and everyone who believed in me. It was about proving to myself that limits exist only if you accept them. I reflected on the journey, the failures, the echoing exercises, the stories, the conversations. Every step built the foundation for this moment. I had learned more than English. I had learned perseverance. I remembered sitting alone in my room, whispering to myself in English in the shower. I remembered laughing at mistakes and pushing through fear. Those small daily habits became my ladder to success. This was the moment my months of consistent effort transformed into reality. Every repetition, every sentence, every story had led me here. English had become my tool, my bridge, my weapon to create opportunity. I realized the dream job wasn't just about coding. It was about communication. It was about being understood, being confident, and being able to express myself fully in another language. I bought gifts for my parents, a gold necklace for my mom, a watch for my dad. They resisted, saying they didn't need anything, but I insisted. This was my way of thanking them for their support, love, and belief in me. That day I understood that success isn't only personal. It's a ripple effect. Your growth can inspire others, help others, and create moments of happiness beyond yourself. Looking back, I saw that every small choice had led here, choosing to speak despite fear, to echo, to journal, to create stories. All these tiny acts became my pathway to mastery. I realized that English was never just a language. It was my key to opportunity, confidence, and self-expression. It was the tool that allowed my dreams to manifest into reality. I felt proud not because I was perfect, but because I had grown. My journey was proof that determination beats talent when talent doesn't act. The dream job was real. My future felt open and limitless. I could now join international teams, collaborate globally, and achieve things I had once only imagined. I knew challenges would come, but I had built skills far beyond English. I had built resilience, self-discipline, and confidence, qualities no rejection could take away. That night, I sat quietly reflecting. I smiled at the thought. 5 months ago, fear ruled my life. Today, courage and consistency had changed it forever. And that's the lesson I want everyone to understand. Progress isn't magic. It's a series of small, deliberate actions taken every day. One sentence, one story, one conversation at a time. English didn't just teach me words. It taught me that I am capable, that I can transform, that I can claim the life I want if I commit, persist, and never give up. I closed my laptop and whispered to myself, I did it. And in that moment, I wasn't just a software engineer. I was proof that dreams are real when effort meets courage. Chapter 10. Giving Back. After receiving my dream job, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. All the late nights, the mistakes, the fear had led me here. It wasn't just about my success. It was about honoring the people who shaped me. I thought of my parents, their sacrifices, their silent support, their unwavering belief in me. Every time I doubted myself, I remembered them cheering from the sidelines. They had carried me even when I felt small. So I decided to give back. I bought my father a watch he had always wanted but never bought for himself. I bought my mother a gold necklace she had admired quietly for years. I wanted them to feel my gratitude. When I handed them the gifts, they initially refused. "We don't need anything, son," they said. But I shook my head. "This is my way of saying thank you," I told them, tears in my eyes. Seeing their faces light up with joy, I realized something profound. Success isn't truly yours until it touches others. Achievements are meaningful only when shared with those who believed in you. I hugged my parents tightly. My father, usually stoic, whispered, "We always knew you could do it." My mother cried softly, holding my hand. In that moment, I felt a connection deeper than words. It wasn't just about material gifts. It was about acknowledgement, love, and recognition of years of support. It was a celebration of the journey we had taken together. I reflected on the long nights I spent repeating sentences, making mistakes, and facing fear. Every moment of struggle now had meaning. Every drop of sweat had built this bridge to gratitude. I realized that giving back creates a sense of fulfillment no paycheck can provide. The act of appreciating others transforms your own achievement into something sacred. I thought about my friends who helped me practice English, encouraging me without judgment. I sent them messages, thanking them for their time and patience. Their support had been crucial. Even small acts of acknowledgement have a ripple effect. Each thank you, each recognition reinforces bonds and creates positive energy. Gratitude is like fuel for both the giver and the receiver. I started reflecting daily on the people who had impacted my journey. Teachers, mentors, friends, everyone who believed in me, corrected me, or simply listened became part of my story. Giving back doesn't always mean gifts. It means recognition, respect, and acknowledgement. Sometimes a simple thank you is enough to honor someone's contribution. I also gave back by sharing my journey online. I wanted others struggling with English or life challenges to see that transformation is possible. Sharing became another way to give back. Writing my story for Easy English Official was more than teaching language. It was teaching resilience, perseverance, and hope. That's my gift to the community that had supported me. I realized that life's victories are sweeter when they lift others as well. My success was amplified because I could celebrate it with my parents, my friends, and anyone inspired by my journey. Giving back made me feel complete. It was the bridge between personal achievement and emotional fulfillment. Gratitude connected my past struggles to my present joy. I often think about the sacrifices my parents made. Nights without comfort, work without rest, dreams delayed for my sake. Their love fueled every sentence I spoke in English. It was humbling to understand that my effort wasn't just mine. It was a continuation of their sacrifices. Success had become a shared victory, not a solitary one. As I looked at the watch on my father's wrist and the necklace around my mother's neck, I felt a sense of closure. Their pride and happiness reflected everything I had worked for. That moment taught me the most important lesson. Life isn't just about achieving your dreams. It's about lifting others while you rise, making your journey meaningful beyond yourself. I decided to make giving back a habit. Every milestone, every success, I would find ways to honor those who contributed to my growth. It became a principle, not an occasional act. Even when I travel or meet new people, I think about sharing knowledge, kindness, and encouragement. Giving back ensures that my journey inspires others as it has inspired me. Reflecting on this, I felt a wave of peace. The fear, the struggle, the doubts, all worth it. Not for the salary, not for the recognition, but for the connection and gratitude I could now express. I whispered to myself, "This is why I worked so hard. This is why I didn't give up." Every struggle mattered. And in that quiet moment, I felt true fulfillment. The journey of learning English had given me more than a language. It gave me resilience, confidence, and the ability to impact others positively. That is the ultimate reward. Looking back, I realized that giving back completes the circle. Success is hollow if it's not shared. Gratitude transforms achievement into legacy, and love makes effort meaningful. Finally, I promised myself to continue this way, working, growing, learning, and always giving back. That was the final chapter, the one that made everything worthwhile. Chapter 11. Lessons for You. Success in English, like any skill, starts with mindset. You must believe you can improve, even when progress seems slow. Doubt is the biggest obstacle, confidence the strongest ally. I remind myself every morning, I am improving. I am capable. I will succeed. Words shape thoughts, and thoughts shape action. Your mind is the engine of your learning. Surround yourself with English in every way. Change your phone language, watch shows, listen to podcasts, read articles. The more you live in English, the faster it becomes part of you. Think in English, speak in English, dream in English. The goal isn't to translate, it's to inhabit the language. Immersion is not optional, it's essential. Speak without fear. Mistakes are not failure, they are proof you are learning. Every error is a step forward, a chance to improve, and a way to train your brain to think faster. Even when native speakers correct you, smile and continue. Nobody expects perfection. Confidence and persistence matter far more than flawless grammar. Listen actively. Don't just hear words. Notice pronunciation, rhythm, emotion, and sentence structure. Shadow native speakers to mimic their natural flow and tone. Shadowing is like echoing life itself. Pause, repeat, match speed and emotion. Your mouth learns what your ears and brain already understand. Learn words in context. Memorizing lists is useless if you can't use them naturally. Create small stories with new vocabulary to cement it in your memory. Make English part of your imagination. Speak stories to yourself, describe scenes, narrate your day. Words will come alive, and your brain will remember them effortlessly. Grammar doesn't need to be memorized. Use it actively. Notice patterns, sentence structures, and prepositions in real conversations. Apply what you hear, and your brain will internalize rules naturally. Consistency beats perfection. Don't wait to feel ready. Speak, write, listen, read every day, even if only for a few minutes. Small daily actions accumulate into massive progress. Don't be afraid of small beginnings. 10 minutes a day speaking may feel insignificant, but it compounds into fluency over months. Action matters more than waiting for skill. Celebrate small wins. Every sentence spoken, every story written, Every shadowed line is proof of progress. Recognition keeps motivation alive. Make English your companion, not a task. Talk to yourself while cooking, showering, or walking. Every moment is an opportunity to practice. Build courage through conversation. Speak to friends, strangers, colleagues. The more you speak, the faster you grow. Silence is the enemy of fluency. Record yourself. Listen back. Notice progress, mistakes, and patterns. Self-awareness accelerates improvement far beyond passive practice. Embrace cultural differences. Learning English also means understanding how people express ideas, humor, and emotions. Language is alive, context matters. Set small, achievable goals. 1 story a day, 5 new words, 10 minutes of shadowing. Consistent steps lead to long-term mastery. Track your progress. Journals, recordings, notes, they show improvement, keep motivation high, and highlight areas to refine. Teach others. Explaining what you've learned reinforces knowledge. Share your tips with friends, family, or online communities. Celebrate courage, not perfection. Every attempt, every conversation, every laugh at a mistake builds resilience and fluency simultaneously. Connect your learning with purpose. Why are you learning English? Your reason fuels consistency, perseverance, and focus when challenges arise. Learn to enjoy the process. Mistakes, pauses, and struggles are part of the adventure. Fun makes practice sustainable, and learning becomes a joy. Finally, remember this: anyone can improve if they act. Dedication, courage, and consistent effort are the only secrets to fluency. Your future self will thank you. Take action today. Speak, write, listen, repeat. Mistakes are your friends. Fear is temporary. Progress is unstoppable. You have everything it takes to succeed. 5 months changed my life. And if I can do it, you can too. Remember, your fluency starts the moment you decide not to give up. Keep practicing every day, listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Mistakes are part of learning, and every small step counts. Thank you for learning with Easy English Official. Let's continue this journey together, one step at a time, and become confident English speakers.